There are some stories that live for a moment, and there are others that live forever. Stories that don't just entertain us, but pierce the soul, stirring emotions that words alone can hardly describe. One of these stories, told nearly 2,000 years ago by Jesus himself, still stands as one of the most moving tales of rebellion, regret, and forgiveness ever told. It is the story of a young man who chose freedom over family, who traded his inheritance for empty pleasures, who fell into the pit of despair, and who finally discovered that grace is greater than all his failures. This is the story of the prodigal son. The story begins not in chaos, but in peace. A father, wealthy and respected, lived with his two sons on a large estate. Life in the household was stable, ordered, and good. But beneath the surface of that tranquility stirred the restless heart of the younger son. He was young, ambitious, and impatient. Every day, as he looked over the fields of his father's land, he saw not opportunity, but limitation. He saw boundaries where his father saw protection. He saw boredom where his father saw blessing. And so, one day, driven by the desire to control his own destiny, the young son made a request that would change everything. He went to his father and said, "Father, give me the share of the estate that belongs to me." To us today, this may not sound too shocking, but in the culture of the time, such a request was unthinkable. In effect, he was saying, "I cannot wait for you to die. I want my inheritance now." It was not only a rejection of his father's authority, but almost an insult to his very life. The father could have responded with anger. He could have disowned the son on the spot. But instead, with a broken heart, he granted the request. He divided his property between his two sons. And just like that, the younger son received what he wanted, his freedom wrapped in a bag of coins. Not long after, the younger son gathered all he had and set out for a distant land. His heart raced with excitement as he left behind the familiar paths of home and ventured into the unknown. In his imagination, life ahead was filled with opportunity, with pleasure, with adventure. And at first, it seemed his dreams were coming true. With pockets full of silver and gold, he became the center of attention. In the bustling city streets of the faraway land, he spent lavishly. He bought fine clothes, dined in luxury, entertained new friends, and indulged in every appetite his heart desired. Night after night, the parties never seemed to end. There was music, laughter, dancing, and the thrill of living without restraint. Wherever he went, people welcomed him, not for who he was, but for what he had. To the young man, it didn't matter. At last, he thought, he was free from the shadow of his father's house. But freedom without wisdom is a fragile thing. And wealth, when spent carelessly, disappears quickly. It happened gradually at first. The son spent more than he realized. His silver dwindled, and soon his gold was gone. The friends who once surrounded him began to vanish, each one drifting away when the money stopped flowing. Then disaster struck. A severe famine swept across the land. Prices soared. Food became scarce. And the young man, once dressed in fine clothes and drinking from golden cups, now found himself penniless and alone. Desperation drove him to seek work. He begged for any task that could put food in his mouth. Finally, a local man hired him, not to work in the fields of grain or vineyards of grapes, but to feed pigs. For a Jewish man, there could hardly be a greater humiliation. Pigs were considered unclean, detested animals. Yet here he was, knee-deep in mud, surrounded by squealing creatures, tossing them food he himself longed to eat. His hunger was so great that even the pods fed to the pigs seemed appetizing. but no one gave him anything. Here, in the filth and stench, the young man had fallen as low as he could go. His wealth was gone, his dignity stripped, his strength wasted. He was empty in every sense of the word, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It was in that moment of utter despair that clarity broke through his fog of pride. He remembered his father's house, not just the warmth of home, but even the servants who worked there. They had food enough to spare while he was perishing with hunger. He said to himself, "How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.'" It was not just hunger that drove him back, but repentance. For the first time, he recognized the depth of his mistake. He had sinned, not only against his father, but against heaven itself. And so, with trembling legs and a broken spirit, he rose from the filth of the pigpen and began the long journey home. Every step was heavy with shame, but also with a glimmer of hope. What the son did not know was that every day since his departure, his father had been watching the horizon. Though deeply wounded, the father never stopped longing for his return. And then, one day, it happened. While the son was still a long way off, the father saw him. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, his face weary. But the father recognized him instantly. Overcome with compassion, the father did something shocking for a man of his stature. He ran. In that culture, dignified men did not run. But love does not calculate dignity. It moves with urgency. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son began his rehearsed confession. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father would not let him finish. He called out to the servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let us have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And so the household erupted in joy. Music and laughter filled the air, but this time it was not the empty laughter of wasted wealth. It was the true joy of restoration. Yet not everyone shared in the celebration. The elder brother, who had faithfully worked in the fields, heard the sound of music and dancing. Curious, he asked a servant what was happening. "Your brother has come home," the servant explained, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." Anger burned within the elder brother. He refused to go inside. When his father came out to plead with him, the son unleashed years of hidden resentment. "Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who squandered your wealth with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." The father, gentle and loving, replied, "My son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And so the story ends, not with a neat conclusion, but with a tension that invites us to reflect. The younger son represents those who wander far from God, chasing after the fleeting pleasures of the world, only to discover emptiness and regret. The elder son represents those who stay close in outward obedience, but struggle with bitterness, jealousy, and self-righteousness. But at the center of it all stands the Father, the image of God Himself, whose love knows no limits. He does not wait for His children to crawl back in perfection. He runs to meet them in their brokenness. He restores dignity where shame has stripped it away. He celebrates not because we deserve it, but because we are His. This parable is not just a story about two sons long ago. It is a story about us, about me, about you. Because at some point, all of us have been prodigals, wandering far from the Father's love. At other times, we have been elder brothers, resentful when grace is shown to others. And in rare moments, we are called to be like the Father, to extend forgiveness and love, even when it costs us. The parable of the prodigal son is not just about rebellion and return. It's about a father's heart that never gives up. It's about a love so fierce that it runs to embrace the broken, a mercy so deep that it silences our rehearsed confessions, a grace so powerful that it throws a feast when the lost come home. So, the question is, where do you find yourself in this story today? Are you far from home, longing to return? Are you close to home but distant in heart? Or are you being called to extend the Father's love to someone who does not deserve it? No matter where you are, the message is clear. You are never too far gone. The Father is waiting, watching, and ready to run. Because what was once dead can live again. What was lost can always be found.